Alright, check it out guys. I thought I'd do a kind of a unique video, something a bit different. Here we have the new Marui MP5A4, which is of course the recoil shock model. So only newly released, only released in Japan about 2 weeks ago. And what we have here is my old MP5A2 from 2006, probably manufactured 2005, 2006, so it's the guts of 18 years old. And I just thought I'd do a quick visual comparison, maybe just talk about how airsoft guns have changed in this time. So, like I say, I've had this gun since about 2006. This was back in the golden days of Classic Army, when this was one of their Pro line models. So it's got a full metal upper receiver. It actually came with the same front handguard as the Marui model. But I actually opted for this was an optional accessory from Classic Army at the time, with the inbuilt flashlight and pressure pad on the right side. So some of you may remember that. It takes 2 CR123As if I remember. It came with a 200 round high cap mag, but I have absolute mountains of these 100 round G&P mags, and I have a few Classic Army ones as well. So they were great quality mags. But yeah, these guns, they are fantastic. The Proline V2 gearbox in these, they were very, very sturdy. I remember the gear set was particularly strong. The cylinder, the compression parts were very good. The yellow piston in them gave a little bit of grief, if I recall, but that was easily swapped out for a replacement item. As you can see there, I have kind of a nut and bolt going through the rear stock, because I can't quite remember why. Something shattered on this at some stage. Like I say, the gun is 18 years old. But anyway, I thought it'd be interesting just to do a quick visual comparison and some of the points that I remember about these guns. So first thing I recall, obviously this has a standard version 2 trigger switch, the old kind of mechanical trigger switch. So I do recall the actual trigger pull was very long on these guns. So essentially the gun would not shoot until you hit the trigger all the way in the rearward position. So it was kind of very lazy and labored. It was kind of like boop, boop, boop. So as fast as you could pull the trigger, it would shoot, but you obviously have to pull the trigger quite a distance to make it shoot. So, and I remember I bought this with now in fairness, I have swapped out, there's like an inline MOSFET in this, which I put in about 10 years ago. It's kind of old tech at this point, but the gun actually came with a large Tamiya connector on it. So it took a huge 8.4 large type battery. You never hear that term anymore, large type. Everything's small type or nunchuck type. And then you're into all the lipos now as well, obviously. But I had a giant kind of luminous green Sanyo battery, which I got from Red Wolf Airsoft, I think, in Hong Kong all the way back. So that had an 8.4. Swapping even to a 9.6 gave it a much better trigger response, obviously. But the FPS with this gun was excellent. It was around 300 FPS. And I remember as well, if I can open the charging handle, this broke on me several times, but I repaired it multiple times over the years. The hop-up had the kind of slider design, which is kind of frustrating on a lot of guns. I know on ICS and some of the JG models this is pretty poor. But on the Classic Army, once you had it set, it's quite a rigid system. So once you had it set in the ideal position, it stayed there and it maintained a very accurate and consistent hop. Get that charging handle down. So slapping this over the years obviously broke it on multiple occasions. I mounted an original Classic Army accessory on the top. That was an original 20mm rail accessory on top. But onto the new gun, I suppose, just to do a quick comparison. This, as you can hear, is quite a hollow. I don't know if that's ABS now, but it's kind of got like a satin finish on it. It looks pretty decent. And in fairness, when I thought about making this video, I had in my head, God, this is going to be a comparison of a really old, ancient gun compared to a brand new top-end 1:1 scale model from Marui. But this model is actually pretty damn decent in terms of how close it is to the real thing. So the finish of the handguard and the stock itself, it's actually pretty close to the real thing. But then you do see the Marui model, and it really is in a different league. Let me just reposition this. So finish on this kind of soft sheen. Now again, it's 18 years old, a little bit hollow sounding. And then the Marui one, lovely textured finish. It's almost like a fiberglass resin or something they've made it from. and it is rock solid. The handguard as well, kind of the same kind of textured finish, and then the whole lower receiver. So I remember this had the SEF trigger group, which I kind of preferred because it had the ergonomic grip on it, whereas this has I don't know what the actual phrase is for this trigger group, but I was never actually a fan of it, because I always found the right side selector dug into my hand. But on the Marui model it actually doesn't, even if you're in, so that's full auto mode, it's actually not beside my finger at all, it doesn't dig into my finger. And if you rotate it around to the burst mode, again it's well away from my finger, so it doesn't actually interfere with it. But the Marui model, as you can see, has that extra fire mode, whereas on the SEF trigger group it was obviously just a semi and full auto gun. There was no MOSFETs or anything back the guts of 20 years ago. And as everybody knows, the Marui ones now have the integrated MOSFET system, and you can hear it activate the difference in the trigger pull distance. So there's barely any trigger travel there at all before the gun activates and shoots. And of course, this is like a Swiss watch. And again, I remember even when this gun was new, there's quite a bit of slop in this selector, quite a bit of wobble in it, going between the fire select modes. And then the Marui one is just very fine, intricate, definitive clicks. There's no doubt in your mind as to what fire mode that you're in. And yeah, just really nicely done. Charging handle on this gun as well. Again, I'm doing this kind of one-handed. So this is the Classic Army, which didn't actually sound too bad. And when you open the charging, pull back on the charging handle, the bolt opens up as well. And then on the Tokyo Marui model, sounds pretty damn good. And Marui have designed this with some steel components to increase the longevity of it as well. So that obviously opens up the bolt and just has that nicer, kind of more definitive, solid sound to it than the Classic Army model. Magazines are pretty similar. This looks and feels just like a real magazine. Look at that kind of almost brownish sheen on it. It looks and feels really nice. Try and insert this into the gun one-handed. Yeah, that clicks in nicely. There's virtually no wobble on that at all. Obviously it's a brand new gun, and then there's a whole lot of wobble with the Classic Army one, but again, we can forgive it considering its age. The Tokyo Marui model as well, we can just remove the pins, even just down to the details. Steel pins, really high quality, whereas it's kind of like a cheaper alloy on the Classic Army model. Handguard comes off nice and easy. No reason to do it on the A4 obviously, because it's wired to the rear, and pin goes all the way back in. I may not be able to remove the one on the stock too easily because it's a bit stiffer. And there we go. And the stock can be removed as well, just if ever you want to obviously swap it out for a different item. And that's the wire harness on the back as well, so you can stick in like a standard 7.4 1300 milliamp LiPo. 25C works pretty damn well, or you can use the original Tokyo Marui 8.4 if you wish. I'll try and get this stock back on single-handed. Yeah, so overall it's a beautiful gun, and they are a world apart obviously in terms of shooting. Like I say, this kind of laboured range distance is pretty decent considering its age, but the Marui's in a different ball game. 60 meters, no problem at all. Pinpoint accuracy, and obviously you've got the recoil as well. So the dimensions of this are obviously bang on to the real steel. Just little details. See, like the dummy kind of weld line there as well on the top, and just the sheen and the fit and finish of the entire gun. It's just like a brick in your hand. I notice the dimensions are a little bit more true to life in terms of the width of the gun. The Marui one's a little bit slimmer, kind of has that athletic 80s look to it, whereas the Classic Army, I think they took a few liberties in terms of the overall dimensions. It's a little bit chunkier. It's kind of hard to see on camera, but just the overall fit and finish of the gun. I've fired a few real MP5s as well myself, and just picking this gun up, it just feels like a real steel gun. Beautifully finished. I've seen lots of pictures online of what guys have done to these guns, and they just look phenomenal when they're kitted out with, you know, flashlights and suppressors, rail mounts on the top. They look the business. Anyway, the MP5A4s are in stock on our website, airsoftaero.com. Next day shipping in Ireland, and we ship all around Europe and North America also. And my Classic Army is not up for grabs. That's going to be heading home with me this evening.